Hello everyone, my name is Zachary Bennett, though most of you may know me as Zach or ZBoy896. Since 2018, I have been working on the first book of a novel project, however schoolwork and other things kept distracting me. Now it is looking like within a month or so, my first book will be finished. The main premise of this project is to appropriate characters present in the Bible in order to develop a larger and complex story. My project dramatizes the conflict between heaven and hell. And while this concept has been done before with Supernatural and the TV show Lucifer, my idea is a little more unique. This video will be the first of many videos discussing and analyzing my own creative work to give people a clearer idea of what the world I am creating is about. This video will be discussing and analyzing my own version of heaven. To all Judeo-Christian beliefs, heaven is the reward at the end of a good and faithful life. It is depicted as a utopia, though its depiction in movies and TV varies. The movie This Is the End with Seth Rogen depicts heaven as a place where the inhabitants can get anything they wish. This is played in a comedic effect when Jay Baruchel wishes for the Backstreet Boys to play one of their songs. In Lucifer with Tom Ellis, heaven and hell is depicted rather similarly, in which they utilize illusions to affect its occupants. In hell, these illusions are often highlight a mistake a character made and force them to relive it over and over again. In hell, these illusions often highlight a mistake a character made and force them to relive it over and over again. In Lucifer's version of heaven, they utilize illusions to simulate a positive experience for its inhabitants. This is seen in season 5 when Chloe Decker went to heaven with Lucifer, and she was stuck with an illusion where she was with her ex Daniel Espinosa before it ended when Lucifer broke through the illusion and rescued her. My version of heaven is different. In the initial prototype of my story, when I first started drafting it in 2018, I had heaven divided into two nations. One nation was those who lived in ancient times and didn't like the change of the times, while the other nation were people who lived in times where technology was more advanced and are more reliant on technology. In my first draft, heaven was on the verge of a civil war, and the second book was going to show the breaking point when the populace had hit their limit. After a while, I disliked this idea, so I revised it. What heaven is now is a bit complicated. Heaven has its own currency. The citizens are able to get the job they enjoyed most in life without an interview process. The citizens are immortal and cannot be seriously wounded, but beyond the surface is where the complications arise. I introduce problems within heaven that are only apparent when you dig deeper and analyze the concealed layers. Heaven is far from a perfect society. On the surface it may be, but oftentimes in life the biggest problems that exist is out of sight, and I will be discussing that in detail in this video. Before I get started with analyzing the first concept, I want to state that I hired an artist to design artwork to represent the upcoming topics. However, the art itself is an artistic representation and it is not reflective on what the things referenced in this video actually looks like. Anyway, sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy the introductory video of my concept in heaven. The Aethir is what is reflective of God's people. They are the biblical angels equipped with biological wings, however their roles are slightly different. I should state that an Aethir and a dead human residing in heaven are not the same. Humans are not given wings when they die like a stereotypical angel. They do not have halos, though they are referred to as angels in my novel series. Angels are meant to refer to humans who have died and are sent to heaven, while the Aethir is a unique race that serves separate roles. Now, there are many different named angels referenced in the Bible and similar religious texts. However, in my story, I will only be using 12 angels to serve the role as Aethir. In the first book, only 6 are introduced, with an extra one mentioned but not seen. As the novels progress, I will be introducing more until all 12 are present. The roles of the Aethir are more unique in my story. They are collectively responsible for creating all life in the given universe, and their primary goal was to study the various aspects of life. There are 6 Aethir that were charged with analyzing different aspects of life, and 6 Aethir charged with protecting them. Their origin is complicated, and I'm reserving for telling their story for a much later time. I want to reserve a lot of the Aethir story to be a mystery. They will hint at certain events to cause the reader to ask questions, but they won't outright explain everything until it is time to delve into certain events. As someone who always had a vested interest in science, even though I may not entirely understand it, the 6 Aethir in charge with analyzing life are essentially scientists who excel in different fields. However, their accomplishments in my story are meant to represent the height of scientific achievements, things that humanity could achieve if technology was advanced by several hundred years. The most important Aethir is the character of God and how he is portrayed. God is perhaps the most complex character. He essentially lives through his personas, a child when he is being humorous, an adult for everyday situations, and an elder when he wants to appear wise and in charge. The reason behind the personas won't be explained until near the middle of the first book, but essentially he adopted the personas as a way for him to cope with a mistake he made in the past. His greatest mistake led to a rift forming between him and his people, and an especially large rift forming between him and his once close friend Samael, or the Devil. Throughout a large part of the story, God is forced to recognize his past mistakes and learn to grow because of it. When he is forced to relive the memories of his past, his facade begins to fade and he begins to have panic attacks. He is an exceptionally flawed character who is trying to better himself due to them. In all religious texts, God is described as all-knowing and all-powerful. In my story, God is essentially the same as an average person. He is not so powerful that he can end someone's life with a snap of his fingers, and he wouldn't want to do that if he could, as he is a pacifist. He is not so knowledgeable that he knows everything about those he meets, but he does use a specific group that I will not be analyzing in this video to gain knowledge of this future in specific. I made this decision because I felt if I made him all-knowing and all-powerful, it would be hard for me to make him a likable character. Also, if there was any problem that exists in my story, what is stopping God from just snapping his fingers and resolving the problem? God will be creating a huge plot hole in my story, as a common criticism people would have would be anytime someone dies, anytime something bad happens, God could just reverse the tragedy and make the trouble irrelevant. I made God appear more human to make the story stronger and to make tragic events in my story have more weight around them. As I was developing my project for my master's degree, one question I had in review was the role Jesus Christ had in my story, and I wanted to state that I will not be including him in my story. It would make an already complex story more complex than needed to. And although Jesus Christ is easily the most recognizable figure in the Bible beyond, of course, God, I'm choosing to not include Jesus as a character to focus entirely on developing the character of God. A lot of the stories in the Bible I am treating as an extended metaphor to events that happen specifically to the Aethir and what they experienced before they created the universe. One other thing I wanted to say about God is that he is partially responsible for creating the two power systems that exist in my story. God was responsible for creating the power of light with Samael, the Devil, who was responsible for creating the power of darkness. God and Samael both worked in studying the concept of morality, the force that compels others to do good or bad things to those around them. They are both fascinated by this concept and attributed it to a major factor of intelligent life, which is what the Aethir wanted to create the most. The powers of light and darkness are essentially synonymous with good and evil, and due to their role in creating the universe is why humanity and every other living being in the universe utilize morality as a way of deciding whether or not they do a specific action. Light and darkness resides in every living being, and it is the reason why someone decides to donate to charity or to steal from someone. Light is God's greatest achievement, and it is the base power that the higher or investigations of demonic entities agency uses to combat demons, and it is what God is able to utilize freely and limitlessly to serve those around him. The inspiration with the Hyde Agency was the inspiration for my novel project as a whole. I had just abandoned my third novel concept after realizing that it would not work. I was still dealing with my depression over a mistake I made that I had not forgiven myself for. I knew I needed to find something to latch onto, something to keep my mind distracted from the negative thoughts I was experiencing. Then one night, I fell asleep, and I dreamt I was an angel on earth fighting demons to protect humanity. One name stood out: the Higher Investigations of Demonic Entities. I immediately woke up, grabbed the notebook from my desk, and scribbled down the name of the organization and went back to sleep as it was 3 o'clock in the morning. When I next woke up, I looked at the notebook once again and began brainstorming a plot for this concept. Ideas flooded through my mind and the Dim Saga was born. Think of the Hyde Agency as the FBI in heaven, except their sole objective is to protect humanity from the threat of demons. The Hyde Agency has been around for 2,500 years, and their mission statement is to protect humanity from the threat of demons while operating in the shadows. Their presence is a secret to humanity, and they have developed methods to mask their movement for thousands of years. They have technology that can render them invisible to humans, but visible to demons and angels. If someone has managed to see a Hyde agent in action, the Hyde Agency has the ability to wipe the individual's memory. They have perfected their secrecy over the years, but the Hyde Agency is not without its problems. Within the Hyde Agency is a Hyde Academy. Think of this like the police academy or the fire academy that teaches recruits how to be a police officer or a firefighter. They are primarily taught the basics of what a Hyde agent does, and are required to at least master the basic form of light construct, which will be discussed in the next section, in order to graduate. Without mastering that ability, they cannot harm a demon effectively. Those who are able to master all three abilities are held in high regard, and the leadership is more lenient with their management. By this I mean someone who has only mastered construct is often placed in a specific team until they master more abilities. Meanwhile, those who master all three are regarded as more skilled and are often placed in a probationary role, where they have a partner who actively trains them with advanced techniques, so they can handle solo missions with relative ease. There are exceptions to this rule, as one of my main characters was permitted to go on solo missions despite not having any advanced training, mainly due to his vocalization of his pride. Over the years, a sort of bias has been developed where it is easy for a Hyde agent to see them as solely a force for good and all demons are evil, when the truth is more complicated. The Hyde Agency and Demons of Hell are meant to be flip-flopping between black and white in morality. By this I mean there are good and bad Hyde agents, just as there are good and bad demons. The point of this dichotomy is to cause the reader to decide for themselves which side is truly in the right and which side is in the wrong. I want people to question, is a Hyde agent truly good? Is this demon truly bad? Etc. I will never outright state which side is right or wrong, as I prefer to let others come to their own decision. But the mission of the Hyde Agency will always remain true. They will always serve as a force to protect humanity. The Hyde agent utilizes the power of light that God created to combat demons. There were three basic forms of light. Construct, which fuses objects with light, making them more effective with demons. Flow, which focuses light into a specific point and manipulating it in a specific way. And breath of life, which expels light outside of your body, giving it a tangible mass. Beyond that, experienced Hyde agents are able to use all three at once to form a near infinite variety of attacks. Light and darkness I have designed to be limited only to the imagination. Anything is possible for what light and darkness is capable of. The figure you see in front of you is an artistic representation of my main character, Alec Lowe. Alec Lowe was described as a prodigy early on in my story because he gained mastery of the three basic forms of light in a relatively quick pace. But he is essentially a rookie in the lowest rank of the Hyde Agency. The ranks from lowest to highest is rank C, B, A, and S class. However, there's a special class which is reserved for the strongest Hyde agent, referred to as the Soldier of God. As one would expect, the Soldier of God does not work directly for the Hyde Agency, but rather directly for God. The Soldier of God represents the apex of the Hyde Agency and are one of the few permitted to travel to Hell for missions. The individual Hyde agent is actually more nuanced, which is partly due to the question of morality I wanted to pose that I mentioned earlier, and partly due to a concept I introduced in the second half of my first book. For now, I am reserving the talk of the nuanced nature of the individual Hyde agent for when I'm ready to discuss the overarching theme of my novel series as a whole, which in itself is meant to be insightful and perhaps inspirational. If this concept interests you, I encourage you to read my book when it releases and look for the theme first introduced in the second half of my book. One of the primary tools a Hyde agent has at their disposal is their ability to create portals to specific locations, simply by thinking of a location and focusing their light to a specific point in a specially designed device. In the Hyde Agency's infancy, a metal gauntlet was used with a tan stone embedded in it. As a Hyde agent focuses their light on their hand, the light is drawn to the tan stone, and the stone is responsible for forming the portal. As technology became more advanced, the portal gauntlet slowly became irrelevant, as newer designs are constantly being developed, rendering the previous designs less effective. Today, Hyde agents wield a silver ring with a tan stone embedded in it. Every Hyde agent wears one, and it has become the standard for the past 100 years. This is one of the most important tools a Hyde agent has at their disposal. While there are more tools a Hyde agent has access to, I'm reserving topics of everything for a more in-depth analysis of the Hyde agency. The Heavens Guard serves as a police force of heaven. They exist strictly to serve the populace. Any problem the people may have, the Heavens Guard is often responsible for resolving it. All Heaven's Guardsmen wear a mixture of white and gold armor, and many of them are Hyde agents who have passed the Hyde Academy and are waiting to go on active duty. Crime is minimal, however, and the most the Heaven Guard has to do in their daily duties is minor theft. The Elder Council is the leadership of Heaven. They are comprised of 4 members, 3 of which are the leaders, and 1 serves as a supervisory position. One elder runs a Heaven's Guard and supervises the protection of the people of Heaven. Another elder runs the Hyde Agency and supervises the protection of humanity on Earth. The last elder serves as a sort of human resources. They are responsible for gathering and resolving any problems that people may have. This elder is essentially responsible for preserving peace within Heaven. The last member of the Elder Council is God. It should be noted that his role is more passive in nature, solely due to his comedic dislike of the political aspect of Heaven. He alone has the power to veto any decision the Elder Council makes if he feels it is just, however, he rarely uses this power. In some ways, the Elder Council also serves as the judges of Heaven. When they convene, they gather in a special courthouse. Although they do not hear traditional cases like a normal judge, they instead discuss issues and vote for decisions that would serve to benefit Heaven in some way. An example that comes to mind is the American Supreme Court. When they rule on a case, some members vote yea or nay, and the most number of votes determines the verdict of the case. The main difference is decisions must be unanimous. If only one member votes no on an issue, they must deliberate until all either agree or disagree. The inspiration of the Elder Council stems from the two-king system of ancient Sparta, where they had 2 leaders that deliberated on issues regarding the future of Sparta. However, a part of the inspiration was me trying to experiment and fuse the roles of judge and leader in designing this group. If one elder retires, an election of sorts takes place where the remaining Elder Council members interview candidates for the position of elder. Meanwhile, one of the other elders temporarily assumes the task of the missing elder. Alternatively, interim elders can be placed until a more definitive position of an elder is found. However, it is very rare for one elder to either retire or go absent, as it is common for an elder to hold their position for a couple 100 years. I mentioned before that my solution to creating an interesting setting, instead of having it essentially be a dystopia on the verge of war, was to have issues that are hidden in plain sight. One of the primary issues is a group, the Primal Order, who serves as a secretive, antagonistic group. They have an incredibly large network of spies spanning millions within Heaven that have infiltrated the Hyde Agency, the Heaven's Guard, and some are even in a position to manipulate members of the Outer Council. However, they are not limited to spies in Heaven. They have contacts that provide them with information on Earth as well as Hell. The Primal Order essentially seeks control. However, what they seek to control and why is intended to be vague. In my first book, they are essentially presented as a passive observer who watches and reacts to the actions of the heroes of my story and plots to counter their actions in some way. The Primal Order was my solution in adding depth to the nature of Heaven. Their existence allows me to provide the illusion of a perfect society on the surface while also showing the problems with the society hidden in plain sight. The inspiration of the Primal Order stems from groups like the Akatsuki from Naruto or the Gorosei from One Piece. Other examples like the Cabal from the Blacklist and the High Table from John Wick also applies. The difference is the members of the leadership of the Primal Order are a secret to its network of spies. And for a large portion of the first book, its leadership members are held in secret. And my goal is whenever a spy is ousted is to be treated as a surprise not only to the reader but to the characters of the book as well. Though there are some exceptions. Estacia is one of the twin capitals of heaven, and in the initial prototype of my story, Estacia was the capital of one of the two nations of heaven, housing the people who were born within the past 500 years or so and are more reliant on technology. One of the reasons why I changed this, as will become clearer when I discuss the other twin capital, was it didn't really make sense why one side would hate the other despite them living in the same progressing time periods. However, I like the idea of having two capitals in heaven that are very different from each other in terms of design, so I kept their designs the same. Estacia is home to artists, scientists, inventors, etc. who have continued and advanced their research in heaven that they pursued in life. The concept between the design of Estacia was the idea of what a city constructed by humanity would look like if it was advanced by 300 to 400 years. It is a thought that fascinates me and it is always fun for me to imagine what it would look like. However, the design of the city is still limited by what humanity could create within a couple hundred years. Yabha is the other twin capital of heaven, and in my initial prototype, it was a capital of the other nation housing people who lived in biblical times. This is the primary reason why I had a problem with the initial design of the city and its occupants. To say biblical times, people may think about 3000 to 2000 BC to about 1080. However, the technology of people who lived in 1180 is still very limited, and this does not include those who lived prior to 3000 BC. I realized it did not make sense why people who lived in that such a time would hate those who lived in later time to the point where they were pushed to the brink of civil war. I had to change the rules of the setting because of this. However, I still like the idea of a city like Yabha as it reminded me of what the city of Jerusalem would look like a couple hundred years ago, and I thought it would be fitting given the content I'm appropriating for my story. Yabha is primarily comprised of stone and wood and is designed like a traditional Middle Eastern town. Despite this, it does have some more modern designs as well. Yabha houses some governmental buildings, with the most notable building being the courthouse where the Elder Council will convene to decide on certain matters to benefit heaven. It is also here where many different judges are housed to hear different cases for everyone in heaven. This building and every other government building in heaven are comprised of gold and marble. Callona is a city built by and for the Aethir, or God, and his people. Imagine a city that has been built and continuously developed for millions of years. That, in essence, is Callona. Callona is a large city built around the peaks of a mountain range. I should stress that it is built around and not on. Callona uses anti-gravity technology to keep the city afloat. Its position is also hidden from people on the ground due to a barrier of clouds. In the beginning, it was a place where all 12 members would gather to advance their research, or for the protectors provided aid if needed. Today, most of the members have left for one reason or another, some by choice, others forced. Now it is home to only 2 members. Whereas the station was more inspired by a science fiction design, Callona, on the other hand, was inspired by a fantasy design. As a gamer, I was always impressed by ornate city designs by different cultures in the games I play. What comes to mind first was the design of Asgard in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and while not my favorite game, the ornate design of Asgard was visually stunning. I am reminded of exploring Coruscant from Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Lastly, I am reminded of exploring the Citadel from the Mass Effect trilogy. All of these designs are incredible, and you can't help but spend some time looking at the environment when you're walking through the map. This is what I wanted to create with Callona, a city of incredible design. This is just a taste of what my novel series is about. When I finish the third and final part of book 1, I will be creating another video discussing my version of hell and what my version of demons is like. when that video is created and out there, I will be finalizing the edits and hopefully my book will be published soon after. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it interests you slightly about my novel project as a whole. If there's one thing I will say is that there is a lot of things I am trying to accomplish in my story. There are a lot of themes and messaging about things I have strong opinions of. I honestly feel that when my book is out there, it has the potential to be something great. I realize a lot of writers say that about their own work, but the fact that everyone who I showed my work to was not only interested but wanted to see more reinforces my beliefs in my own work. Thank you guys for listening and have a great day. There's one final thing I want to say is all the artwork I have shown in this video is created by the artist Aethir. Link down below in the pinned comment is a link to Aethir's Twitter account. Go ahead and check her out if you want to commission some artwork. She develops really high quality artwork that is honestly... She develops really high quality artwork that has impressed me to no end. And she is definitely a good person to turn to when discussing creating artwork for your own personal projects. That being said, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all next time.